Well, we should be around the end of half-time between Canada and Panama right now, but it's been an eventful day in all things Canadian soccer. Canada-Panama cancelled after the players refused to take the field due to a wage dispute with Canada Soccer all over World Cup bonuses and monies ahead of Qatar 2022. A tough day for Canadian soccer, no doubt. I'm James Sharman, joined by Ian Hume and Gareth Wheeler. So to recap very briefly, I mean, it's so complex, this entire situation, and we'll be doing this, I'm sure, for many days to come. Not too many, hopefully, but many days to come. At about 5 p.m. Eastern today, the players penned an open letter on social media. They questioned the direction of Canada Soccer. They questioned Canada Soccer business and demanded transparency in the deal it signed 4 years ago. They accused Canada Soccer of disrespecting them and for not even attending some meetings. Reformative change really is at the forefront here, and that's been needed for a while, in fairness. Now, the CSB have responded with a statement of their very own. They said not too many minutes ago, the CSB is incredibly disappointed to learn through social media that tonight's game between the Canadian men's national team and Panama was cancelled. But we fully support the men's and women's national team players in a call for transparency from Canada Soccer. CSB entered into an agreement to help grow the sport in Canada at all levels, including guaranteeing sponsorship and broadcast revenue, and that previously did not exist. We have also committed to working with Canada Soccer on the development of an equivalent women's Tier 1 domestic league. We have invested tens of millions of dollars and will continue to invest millions more to benefit Canadian soccer. We are proud of our agreement with Canada Soccer and what it means to the Canadian soccer ecosystem. Transparency is the key word, I think, today. It seems that's what the players are demanding from CSB, Gareth. And listen, it's a tricky one. Let's not kid ourselves here. When CSB penned their deal, broadcast rights were hard to come by for the national team, as simple as that. So no matter what side of the fence you sit on right now, you can't deny that. But you also understand why the players want to understand the financial realities of their predicament right now. Now, why they didn't know that 4 years ago is a question that should be asked at some point. But what is your reaction to the CSB's response to the players' initial letter?
I think it addressed what needed to be addressed here, because the CSB is just one part of, I think, a bigger story here that's developed. Of course, it's great when players want to be involved in the process and know what the financial situation looks like. So, knowledge is power in these circumstances. And it reads that the CSB are prepared to be fully transparent of their dealings. And obviously, this includes the establishment of the Canadian Premier League as well, so building professional infrastructure. I'm not sure if the entire gripe that the players have with the CSA is about just the CSB. Wages at the World Cup, that seems to be the biggest sticking point here, and the disagreement between percentages being disrespected by the organization. And I think the CSA has oftentimes been their own worst enemy. They need more professional people, more professional infrastructure in order to take this organization forward. And clearly the players don't believe that's something that they're seeing right now. So there's nuance involved here. CSB's part of it, World Cup's part of it, treatment of the players, and they want a voice in how to grow this thing as well, which I honestly think is a huge positive out of this entire equation. When you and your teammates were playing for the national team, how involved were you in these talks? And, this seems like maybe a turning of the page in a new way forward.
Yeah, and I think you've got places like you've got your other sports who have your players' associations. This is something, okay, we've had this argument with the CPL and them wanting the players' association. Yep. Do we need somebody that's representing the men's and women's and youth and everything through the Canadian soccer? That's something that obviously needs to be approached, but they want to have a say in what goes on and not just kind of dictated to, well, this is what we've got, this is what you can get. No, well, there needs to be a to and fro. There has to be. It's just, for me, it's an area that I'm not overly comfortable with being in open air. I know there needs to be transparency between all parties, but to be thrown out into open air like it was today, that's the biggest issue. Not that it's the wrong thing to happen.
It seems they're at the wit's end, though. it seems to me from the players, they in their minds, they have tried everything at this point. They've pushed their agenda. It's fallen deaf ears for whatever reason, wrong or right, and they say we have no choice now but to go public and to try and leverage a situation, right? You see it all the time from other countries. It's ugly and it's dirty, but it's necessary as well, I think, at times. We will be hearing, by the way, from Canada Soccer, we think in about 5 minutes for their press conference from Dr. Nick Bontis, the president. We'll hear what he has to say, but it's so tricky. And Humi, I ask you, I mean, they mentioned how they feel disrespected, and I've heard that many times over the years from players about how they feel about the CSA for 20, 30 years. You played there. Did you feel disrespected?
See, I'm cut from a different cloth in certain parts of it. I was literally there to play soccer. That was it. I was never the superstar. I was never this. I just wanted to be there. I loved being there. To an extent, when things went on about our negotiations for our fees and whatever, I let the powers that be and the more senior players look after that. I know now you're going to have your Milan Borjans, your Thibaut Hutchinsons, Junior Hoylets, Fonzo Davies, the bigger names and the older players will be the ones doing all that. I'm willing to bet your younger and kind of squad players won't be arguing about being disrespected, but I'm pretty sure the bigger ones will be.
This press conference is very important because there's no way every player in the room feels the exact same way about this. It's impossible. Players come from different backgrounds, have different values, see things in a different way. We do know that they're united in this. There's no question about that. They're all in this together, no matter what the ramifications are. It's very important that now we hear from the Canadian Soccer Association. There's a lot of pressure on this association. We know what they've been through in the last few weeks. Priorities have been put all over the place. And again, this is an organization that is their own worst enemy, have made mistakes in the past, and these things absolutely need to change. The argument is whether the action today to skip out and not play a game on home soil, whether that reaction is justifiable based upon the potential fallout. And I'm not just talking about just in terms of the financial, but this is preparation for the World Cup, our first World Cup since 1986. Is it worth it? And clearly to them, this is a game that they're willing to play here.
I'll say this, though. I mean, just looking at Twitter the last couple of hours, it's a lot of fun, let me tell you. The public support for the players remains extremely strong. It generally does.
As it should be.
They've taken the fans on this incredible journey the last year, a couple of years. And the fans now want to be rewarded with a World Cup. And now this happens, and it's so frustrating. As I mentioned before, the default setting is always to hammer Canada Soccer. And for many years, that's been, quite frankly, the right thing to do. At this point, I don't know, because there is no transparency. I don't know. We're going to find out shortly, I think, from Dr. Nick Bontis. And I'm not sure what he can say today. This conversation is going to go on for a very long time, I think, sadly. But you mentioned before that the player union possibility at some point. This is a great example. You need one unified voice. That letter was signed by the national team, not by one person, right? Or not one group. I think that has to be a move forward. The alumni need to get involved. There's some expertise there off the field that needs to be tapped into at every level. There's options here for reformative change, I think. But the short term,
these are all big picture issues. Right now, we need this team back on the field training. We need a united approach from the executive level down through the players. They need to feel engaged, need to feel like their voices are heard, and we need to understand what the numbers actually are, what was offered, and why there seems to be such a gap in communication and processes, how these stories were leaked, and why all of a sudden is all this dirty laundry being aired.
If we're going to get transparency, we need to hear tonight from Dr. Nick Bontis exact numbers, what were offered to the players, and then we need to hear back from the players, yes or no. And if they agree, great. If they don't, someone's lying, right? Or there's been some miscommunication. Simple as that. So it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
It's an important press conference. I don't think he just needs to speak to the nation or us. He needs to speak to the players.
Yeah, that's the most important. Iron it out with your diplomatic responses on air. Make sure everything that is thrown on the table with the players. That's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, but so far they haven't been able to talk to each other, apparently, and agree on anything. So I don't know what can be, surmised.
They did yesterday. They did yesterday. It sounded intense. Things were disclosed.
And
You were hoping that it could have provided a resolution where they played today. The players waited till the last minute. People were going to the game. The operational staff, the technical staff, everyone was in the stadium preparing for the game. They decided to go this way.
Let's head now to Vancouver. Here's Dr. Nick Bontis and Earl Cochran.
We'll start with a brief comment. We will go 4 or 5 questions before we get them back to the hotel to continue the work that they have to do today. And I will let our president, Dr. Nick Bontis, commence.
Merci, Richard. Merci.
Afterwards, we'll have Earl Cochran also there for any additional questions. President, please.
Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes très déçus du refus de l'équipe nationale masculine de jouer aujourd'hui. Nous aimerions tout d'abord présenter nos excuses à tous les fans de Canada Soccer et désirions retirer notre gratitude pour soutien continu. Canada Soccer is very disappointed the men's national team players' decision to refuse to play today. We would like to firstly apologize to all of our Canada Soccer fans and reaffirm our gratitude to you for your continued support. I am sorry that this game did not occur today. Canada Soccer has been working with the players in good faith to find a path forward that is fair and equitable to all. We would like to have a facts-based discussion within the fiscal reality that Canada Soccer has to live with every day. Canada Soccer is committed to the principles of fairness and equity, and we believe we presented a fair offer to the players. We benchmarked our offer against other national teams from around the world. On the issue of gender equity raised in the players' letter, Canada Soccer's offer also committed to provide the exact same terms to our women's national team. As we move forward, Canada Soccer's strategic commitment is to support all of our programs, from grassroots right through to the elite first teams. Canada Soccer's relationship with Canada Soccer Business has been pivotal in building soccer and growing the game in this country. Canada Soccer's business was pivotal for the game last night that Toronto FC played with Forge, which was one of the most exciting finals we've ever had. Pivotal for the investment of our alumni national team players who've now come back to invest their own money in concert with the CSB to build the Canadian Premier League. They have invested substantial funds and support to promote soccer in this country at a critical time for its growth. In partnership together, we have built a men's professional league in this country, creating a domestic pathway for soccer talent from across Canada. Canada Soccer continues to be responsive. We remain ready and available to continue to work immediately with the players towards our collective goal of performing at our best as we approach Qatar. In the meantime, Canada Soccer will continue its preparations to get all of our national teams ready for the respective competitions to compete with excellence in the coming months. Let me first address the men's proposal that we have analyzed through empirical data. If we as an association only had the men's team and the women's team to take care of, and nothing else. No futsal, no beach, no para, no U20, no U17, no U15 on both sides. No coaching development programs, no referee development programs, no national championships. We could still not afford this proposal. It is untenable as written. Thank you.
We'll take a handful of questions. Matthew, please.
There are some pointed accusations in there. There are some pointed accusations in there, Nick, in terms of when they wanted to start the negotiations.
Sure.
And are you going to be, and whether or not you'll be more transparent about the deal with Canada Soccer Business.
Sure.
So how are you going to answer those with the players? And
Yeah, And I have Earl beside me, who had the first point of contact with the players about negotiating and starting that process immediately after the Jamaica game. I'll let Earl address this issue. Go ahead, Earl.
Yeah, so the players had reached out just prior to that March window when we went down to Costa Rica. We'd engaged them to talk about the process just prior or just after the Jamaica game in Toronto. And the process was started and continued soon after that, right? But I want to remind you too, the first opportunity for us to be in the same place was this very one that we're here. The other thing I'll say, and this is important to know, that playing this game was at no risk to their bargaining. We had clearly said to them that anything that we arrive at down the road will be retroactively applied to anything that they were doing. So there was no risk to what they were looking to do.
Are there any concrete plans to negotiate with the players tonight, tomorrow? Do you intend to get them back on the field at some point this week? And is there a guarantee they're going to play the game on June 9th, since in the letter they do tie progressions in the negotiations to playing that game?
You had multiple questions in there, so I'll try to remember them in order. First of all, with regards to negotiations, immediately upon arrival to this city where we were physically in the same space, Earl and I have made ourselves available to the players all day, all night, with our phone numbers. We had a board meeting today. Through that board meeting, we were immediately available throughout the whole time. Immediately after I get off this desk with all of you fine folks, we will go back, send another message saying that we are available to meet and come up to a solution. With regards to the Curaçao game, today was a friendly. That is a separate set of rules and situations compared to an official Nations League CONCACAF sanctioned competition. If we cannot arrive at a deal and the players refuse to play the Curaçao match, that will be a CONCACAF issue to address under the auspices of FIFA. But our intention has always been and continues to be to come up with a solution as soon as possible.
Joe Callahan, The Guardian. I just wonder, on the back of the Iran cancellation, to then have this today, how do you think that the last 2 weeks look to the rest of the world, to our, I guess first off to the rest of the country, but then to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I'll deal with the Iran issue we've already talked about, right? We've always shared that information. So I would divert you back to the conversations that we've had in the past about Iran. What we did in the last week to pivot to the Panama game was move mountains. It's very difficult to get an international opponent who is willing to come here. And I want to say publicly that I apologize to the Panamanians. They're our friends. And I'm sorry that they had to go through this. They're in the middle of a Nations League campaign themselves. And they had agreed, because of our friendship, to come here and participate so we could give not just the team and the coaches the available opportunity to play a game, but to provide that to our fans as well. So I want to thank them and apologize for what they've gone through. I also want to thank, because it's, again, not easy to deliver an international opponent in 48, 72 hours. I want to thank our staff for what they did to deliver here. And they shouldn't have had to go through what we just went through. So what I think it says to the international community is we have an unbelievable ability to punch above our weight in everything that we do, to deliver events, to deliver competitions, to deliver anything that both FIFA and CONCACAF ask us. So that's what I think it says to the international community.
Hi guys, Peter Galindo, Sportsnet. Canadian Soccer Business, in their statement, said that they've invested tens of millions of dollars to benefit Canadian soccer. It also mentions unprecedented revenue to Canada Soccer in the past 18 months in the forms of sponsorship and international media dollars. What areas has the money been invested in, how much, and what is the nature of the relationship between the Federation and CSB? Thank you.
Well, I can talk about, I think a question for CSB about how much. But I think if you look at what CSB, One Soccer, the Canadian Premier League, the ownership groups of that league, what they have done over the last 3.5 years has been remarkable, right? It's a league that started 3 years, so they've been in operation for 3.5 years. 2 of those years have been through, actually, sorry, 2.5 because we're still in it, have been through a pandemic. You have a club like Forge, and Nick referenced it just earlier, who went toe-to-toe with quite arguably the largest club in our country. They then went down to CONCACAF and snaked their way through a competition that led them to the Champions League. So I think what CSB, One Soccer, CPL, and the owners, I will mention, some of those owners are former national team players, are doing for football in this country should be congratulated, not criticized.
Thank you, Earl.
Gemma Kirsten-Smith, the Canadian Press. The players in their letter seem to be calling for some change in leadership through Canada Soccer, whether that means that they want more former players or just that they wanted some change. What's your response to that call for change in leadership?
So, with regards to change, let me address the issue with regards to the comment about players. We have bylaws that stipulate that an alumnus national team player must be on the board of directors. And we have an alumnus who is a national team player who is on our board of directors. With regards to leadership, this organization is going through a change in terms of leadership, respecting human capital continuity. And let me explain what I mean by human capital continuity. 2 of the most senior individuals of this organization, Peter Montopoli and Joe Guest, who combined have decades and decades of experience in soccer in this country, departed just at the end of this last calendar year. The board had Earl Cochrane as our acting general secretary, who still retains that position. And in addition, the board has approved a fundamental investment in the senior human capital of the organization to address issues pertaining to what we still need to work on. What do we still need to work on? Business development, we still need to work on. We still need to work on commercial relationships. We still need to work on human capital. These are the issues that we are addressing through senior management. In terms of change, that's the change that we believe is necessary to build the capacity of this organization. When I was elected president of this organization, I finally had an opportunity to get an inside look behind the curtain of this organization. We are a small organization. $25 million is our budget. We are a small organization. Think of what we've done. We hosted a Women's World Cup that broke records. We hosted a U20 Women's World Cup that broke records. We bid to jointly host the 2026 World Cup. We had our women become Olympic gold medal champions that no one will ever take away as an outgrowth of a back-to-back bronze and bronze performance. And then we had our men, who I respect, under circumstances that were difficult, to go through a repechage, compete, win, get to the octagon, clear the table, and finish top of the table. And now we're going to Qatar. And I'm sorry that the game didn't occur today, not just for the fans, but I'm sorry for the technical staff, the coaching staff. John Herdman, at the beginning of this window, had 16 training sessions with the national team between now and Qatar. That number went to 14 today. We cannot afford to lose these opportunities to have our men display the performance that I know they're capable of when they go to Qatar.
Last 2 questions before we head back to the hotel. Matthew.
I can hear your passion, Nick, obviously, for the contributions you and Earl feel the Canada Soccer business has given to the CSA, but I read that statement and hear the players want to have a better understanding of it and be greater stakeholders and don't feel respect on their side. I see 2 sides that are entrenched here.
Yeah.
Where is the middle ground? How do you start that?
That's a great question. I'll tell you where the respect is. The respect is we need to have face-to-face dialogue. Okay? Earl and I arrived here specifically to have face-to-face dialogue, to participate in this window, to have a board meeting, and we struggled to meet face-to-face. And I'm telling you, when I'm with you, looking in your eyes, Nick, just like you're looking in my eyes, we can see the cues of communication. You can nod and I can nod, and if you go like this, then I understand what I said probably wasn't right, and I can make an adjustment. We cannot negotiate this through the media. We will not negotiate through this through the media. We have had Earl's phone and my phone ready and available for a response anytime. And I'm telling you, we will immediately leave this room, go to the same hotel that the players are staying at on purpose, so that we are ready to sit down and take a proposal that's over here from one side and a proposal that we believe is fair, that is equitable with the women, that is at 30% to the men in sharing World Cup prize money, that we have benchmarked against nations around the world, that we believe is fair. And that's what I think is respect. Respect is to look into their eyes. Nick, first and foremost, I'm a soccer fan. I'm a fan of the players. I'm a fan of what they've achieved for this country. I'm a fan of how we've transcended sport in this country. I'm a fan of what the women did and how they transcended sport in the country. But my job as president is a responsibility to the fiduciary and stable health of this organization, not just for the last 120 years that we've been alive, for the next 100 years they're going to be alive. And I can't accept an offer that will put our organization in a financial position that is untenable. And what I need to do is explain to the players, which we have, what our financial position is and how we can move forward so that we can incentivize them, so that we can motivate them, and more importantly, Nick, to reward them. I want them to go to Qatar knowing that if they win those matches, they will be rewarded, because that's what feels right, and that's the right thing to do. But the other right thing to do, Nick, is to make sure that whatever we pay the men, we pay the women, because that's the right thing to do. Yeah. I can tell you, Nick, we haven't even gone to that discussion yet. Their proposal says nothing about tickets. Our proposal back to them says nothing about tickets. So that was actually a new item for our discussion. No problem. We'll figure out what we can do about tickets. But I also want to point out that as of the time that we started negotiating, we don't control tickets. FIFA controls tickets, and we don't even know who's playing in the World Cup yet. I think we do, though, as of today, if I'm not mistaken. The final games must have happened today, if I'm not mistaken, or they haven't, sorry. I'm not 100% sure if all 32 teams have officially been named. So I'm being honest with you, there's nothing in this proposal that talks about tickets. There was nothing in our proposal that talks about tickets. But let me tell you something else. If you're going to take a significant portion of that revenue, 100%, what are you leaving with the association for us to even afford to be able to give you tickets for your family?
Bruce Arthur, Toronto Star. How much of your financial limitations in terms of what you can give the players is related to the deal with Canadian Soccer Business and their control of sponsorship and broadcast revenues above a certain threshold?
That's a fair question. I'll start and I'll have Earl add to it. But in terms of our revenue base, if we're just going to use $25 million as round numbers, we need to appreciate that a big chunk of that, a third of that, just using round numbers, are players' fees from players all across the country. And let me remind everybody, for 2 years, kids did not play soccer in this country, not because we couldn't allow them to play, but because the pandemic wouldn't permit them to play. So we had financial constraints going in. The CSB deal is not only pivotal to the growth of soccer in this country, it guarantees payments to our association. And why is that an important thing? Because that allows the staff to manage programming. When you manage programming next year and the year after, leading towards 26, it's way easier to manage a business when you know what cash is coming in. And on the sponsorship side, when this deal was first constructed, that guaranteed payment was a favorable payment. That's why both parties agreed to it and signed that deal. And frankly, during COVID, it was going to be difficult for us to get anywhere near those sponsorship payments on our own. And let me finish by saying, the CSB deal and the payments that were guaranteed to us during the COVID years were the exact amount of money that we used to help fund the women to go get their gold medal and the men to finish top of CONCACAF. Let's not forget that piece.
In terms of sponsorships coming in now and broadcast revenues, when this team is in a demonstrably different position than it was in 2018, that floor becomes a ceiling in terms of how much money you're bringing in, and the rest, if I understand, is directed to the CSB, that's got to limit your ability to offer, to negotiate with the players in terms of monetary compensation.
Yeah, but that's one source of revenue. There are other sources of revenue that we have as well at our disposal. So I don't want to make a direct link because it's not accurate to say that this CSB deal somehow hampers our ability to pay the men. It doesn't. We've offered the men a fair deal and offered the women a fair deal, given the financial situation that we're in and what we predict that we're going to be in over the next few years leading up to 2026.
Can I have a quick clarification on that question? Have you had face-to-face meetings with the players, and are any meetings scheduled with the players?
So I can tell you there's no meetings scheduled for tonight because we're here with you fine folk. Earl will absolutely notify the players immediately after we're done here today as we cross the building back into the hotel, say that we're ready to meet. But let me put something on the table right now. We're all disappointed. I am as a fan. I am as a representative of this organization. Earl is as a representative of the staff of the organization. The technical staff, the coaching staff, and so are the players too. I used to be a soccer player. Earl used to be a soccer player. There's nothing worse than thinking about a soccer game and then a soccer game not happening for a soccer player. So we will do everything in our power to make sure that the Curaçao game and the Honduras game move forward. And not only that, the next window after that and the next window after that, leading to Qatar. I do not want to be standing here in front of you talking about why players refuse to play. I want to stand up in front of you respecting the players for the first time in 36 years that got us on the global stage of competition.
And just to clarify, there have not been face-to-face meetings, or have
Oh, there have been.
There have been.
So you guys met
Yeah.
last night, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde. Merci.
Welcome back, and yes, the plot thickens. Very firm, Dr. Nick Bontis today. It seems, from what he says there, there's very little common ground right now. These have not been very solid negotiations by any stretch. He says that Canada Soccer presented a very fair offer in his intimation, how, quite frankly, with just the men's and women's senior teams, they still not could afford the proposal given by the players. They called it untenable. Surely there's a compromise. There must be a compromise. There will be a compromise at some point. But when I listen to those comments, Wheels, I don't feel optimistic this is going to be resolved anytime soon.
The one that stood out the most was if the Canadian Soccer Association only had to take care of the men's and women's national team. That's it. Not referees, not players, not para, not beach, not anything else. That what is being proposed from the players' perspective, they still couldn't be able to afford it. That's alarming. Unless the players, there's a level of distrust, they think he's lying. Mm-hmm. I don't know why he would stand out in front and make that kind of claim. Yeah. That says a lot.
So we need to see that proposal, do we not? They talk about
do.
transparency.
That's the one thing I'm disappointed wasn't brought up, wasn't revealed, and there might be legalities behind it. What are on those different proposals? I've been told one thing. I'm sure you guys have heard other things. Nick revealed it, the 30-30 split. We were accurate. That's what we've been reporting the entire time. That was what the offer was, not the 10-40, which was initially put out there. He also mentioned 100% at one point. Mm-hmm. He threw that out there. That was information that was presented to me as well from multiple sources. So there's some kind of disconnect here in terms of expectation, use of language, manipulation of numbers. And you're right, there's a gap. And it's very difficult sitting here for us to figure it out. That's between those two gentlemen behind the podium and the group of players who've represented this country so well with distinguishment, right? So,
well, Humi, I mean, when you hear your president, if you're a player, as you once were, pointing the finger of responsibility to the players about training sessions, he mentions we had 16 sessions between now and the World Cup. Now there's 14. Essentially, the players must get back on the field. How would that make you feel as a footballer, fighting for what you think is right?
Do you think these players want to travel away from their wives, kids, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever it is, families, to the other side of the world and sit in a hotel? Let me be honest with you, I wouldn't do it. If you told me to go there and, okay, this is happening, but I don't think we're doing it. Because everyone would have been kind of in the know when we'll stay in the hotel and we'll do this. Not a chance. Not a chance I'm getting on the plane. I'm not leaving my family to go and do that. So do you think they've had any intention to do that? No. They were hoping things were going to be ironed out. They're there to play football. They're not there to play PlayStation or go swim in the pool or go to the gym. That's not their job. They're there to prepare for World Cup. Be all and end all. That's it.
These negotiations began in March, from what we hear.
Apparently.
Right, apparently, which seems quite close, quite frankly. Could they not have started earlier?
Yep.
If Canada Soccer was very firm in their 30% and that's it, why are we finding out about it now? Yeah. You know, you do wonder, this should have been wrapped up, signed and sealed, negotiated behind closed doors. And I understand why they're upset about the media being involved, but sometimes you are pushed. Months ago, surely.
I'm not justifying it because I don't know why. And you're right, it does seem late, but two of the very few people that actually work in the CSA left at the end of the year. In Peter Bontopoli, the General Secretary, and Joe Guest, who did a lot of everything with the CSA. I don't know if one of those two things, there's a link there. Can I also just say, like look, we work for One Soccer, we're on air on One Soccer. It was brought up in the press conference. I find these questions about the CSB very, very odd, the timing of all this. Because what was abundantly clear through your generation playing and before that was there needed to be clear soccer business infrastructure created within the CSA. So when moments like this came up, we could capitalize. So we could have a Canadian Premier League. So we could have a top-tier women's league. They were willing to pay a fee for rights to Canadian soccer and dedicate a channel like this with the mindset that we're building something here. There's a place now for Canada Soccer to go to. We've witnessed media organizations across this board, and a lot of us have been affected by it. Friends, us as individuals, where doors have been closed because the game hasn't been put on the same level as other sports in this country. We're building something, and I'm not sure why the CSB is being targeted. I can't imagine a world where this is of the utmost priority of the players. This is where there's a little bit of a detachment. I get the argument about compensation. I 100% appreciate that from the players. The timing, the disrespect, I 100% agree with that. Professionalization of the organization, I get it. But this whole CSB argument is very, very weird to me where it's actually coming from right now. Remember, that number, $25 million, that's not a huge budget. Mm-hmm. For a look around for a soccer federation. This isn't Hockey Canada we're talking about here. This is small-time stuff.
Yep.
And it seems rather silly at a time when we should be building this. We're throwing out all of our dirty laundry and taking a you-know-what all over it. This is not where we're supposed to be right now.
I will say, Wills, the one area that really irks me in the whole Canadian soccer narrative is this belief out there that there are big broadcast deals to be cut for the national team. There just hasn't been. It's as simple as that. There hasn't been. And if you believe that, you're fooling yourself. Really, it's that simple. And believe me, we've been in this business for a long time. It's extremely frustrating for us, but that is a reality. Not how we thought we'd spend this Sunday. Canada, Panama did not go quite as planned. Fingers crossed, Curacao will. There will be action. And then, of course, Honduras a few days after. Not a great day for Canadian soccer. Let's hope they work this out and find some compromise. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.